This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I'm joined today, once again, by integrative health practitioner Jill Bucaro, who is joining us all the way from Portland today. She's on a school bus and car traveling all the way around the States. How are you today, Jill?
I'm so good. I'm enjoying the Northwest.
Superb, superb.
Yeah.
Today, we are going to be speaking about oils that one could use for a wide variety of applications, whether that be dressing your food all the way through to, say, deep fat frying. Being an avid home cook, I pay quite a bit of attention to oils. I always look at the application, what I'm wanting to gain from that oil, how I'm going to be using that oil, whether it be a dressing all the way through to that deep fat frying, not something I do that often. And also, what kind of smoke point each of these oils have, that being the point at which the oil both smokes but also begins to degrade somewhat. I've been thinking recently, though, that I should be looking more at the percentage of fat within those oils and also the type of fat within those oils, that being a good fat or a bad fat, I suppose. So I guess the leading question would be, what is the difference between a good fat and a bad fat?
Okay. So there's a couple ways we can go with that. But I think what's really important is that our bodies need fat.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been, the no fat, the low fat craze. I think that was like kind of in the 90s, right? Like we're all looking for fat free. But I think just to establish that you're right, there are good fats and fats that our bodies need for our brain health. Our brain is 70-ish% fat. Our immune system, our heart, our hormones, hair, skin, nails, we need fat to absorb some nutrients like vitamins A and D and E and K are fat soluble. So if we're not getting any fat into our bodies, we're not assimilating those kinds of nutrients.
I see.
So I just kind of wanted to let everybody know that, like, yes, we need fat. Now, onto the different kinds of fats. There's usually two kinds of fat that get the most attention with regards to like essential fatty acids or what might be in an oil, a constituent in the oil. And those are omega-3s and omega-6s. Okay. So I don't know if you're familiar, but we need both. Both are needed for our brain health and for growth and development and heart health. What we might hear a lot about is taking omega-3s. So we're looking for omega-3 foods, or we need more omega-3s. And maybe we should get rid of those omega-6s because they're inflammatory. But Jamie, you'll appreciate this. So historically, we've eaten a ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 of 2 to 1. Oh. So historically, we've eaten a 2-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. And that's worked well for us. Today, the average is 15 to 1. So we're eating 15 times omega-6 as we are omega-3. So that's the problem. That's the issue, is that we're totally out of balance. Now, omega-6s tend to have this inflammatory property. Right. We need inflammation at some point in our body, right? Like when we're hurt, when we're injured, we need inflammation. But when we're at that 2-to-1 ratio, it's working perfectly in balance with the omega-3s. When we're up there with the omega-6s being 15 times the omega-3, that's the problem. And so that's why we hear a lot of like omega-6s are bad, omega-6s are negative, they're inflammatory. It's really just the balance. The other thing is that we tend to get those omega-6 oils from things like the deep fried foods in restaurants, the packaged foods, the processed foods, like that kind of stuff. So those are like the cheaper oils that are more processed. Those tend to create or make up those omega-6s that we're eating. So that's kind of like the basics, I guess, of like the oils and the fats.
Now, when it comes to cooking and preparing food at home, what are your preferred oils for different applications?
So I use 3 oils primarily. I use avocado oil, coconut oil, and olive oil. Okay. And I use them for different reasons, which I think you are probably familiar with being a home cook, is the smoke point is a big differentiator of when I'm going to use what. So like avocado oil has a smoke point of above 500. Most of us, if we're cooking something in the oven or on the stove, aren't going to get above 500. So that's a great cooking oil. And smoke point meaning if you've ever put oil in the pan and you see it smoking, that is truly the smoke point. Yep. But what comes along with that is usually terrible taste. I mean, you're literally burning the oil and you're losing the benefit. So it's really changing the molecular structure of the oil to be more inflammatory or to have like a chemical structure that's not really helpful or recognized by our body. So avocado oil I use for cooking. Coconut oil, whether it's refined or not refined, can have a high smoke point. So you just want to double check on, if you're looking for coconut oil. The unrefined tends to be more coconutty in flavor. Yes. Yeah. So if you're using something for like curries or like desserts or something like that, coconut oil is great. If you get the refined, you get less of that coconut flavor. So it's a little bit more neutral. And then I like olive oil for lower temperature things, salad dressings, lower temperature cooking, things like that, because I think it tastes great and it maintains the benefits at those lower temperatures. So olive oil, depending on what kind, can be, 300 to 400 degrees of a smoke point. If you're roasting something or pan frying something, you're definitely exceeding that.
When it comes to olive oil, I think something that many people are unaware of when they see the light olive oil in the market aisle, they imagine that is lighter in fat, but it's not actually. It's a more refined olive oil, right? It has less flavor to it, and because it's more refined, it has a higher smoke point.
Right, you're right. It's fat is still fat. It's still all oil. It's just, you're right, exactly. The processing that it's gone through. So it's less olivey, right? You get less of a flavor. So some people enjoy that because I think they truly don't like the flavor of olive oil. Like they think they like olive oil, but they don't, because it's got that kind of like almost like bitter, that briny kind of like, and some people, I don't think care for it. So that light olive oil, but you're right. I think it's like, oh, it's lighter. Maybe it's healthier. No, it's lighter in color and more processed, which typically means any of the beneficial, parts in there are probably extracted out. The more things are processed, and this I tend to believe for almost anything, the more we process things, the less nutrient dense they become in general, right? So you're getting all of those like helpful antioxidants and the things that you're taking the olive oil for are gone, or at least decreased.
So we know about the smoke points of these 3 different oils that you use. What kind of applications do you use them for because of those smoke points and the flavor and nutritional quality they bring to your dish?
Yeah. I like the avocado oil because it's very neutral. So if you have something delicate or something that you really want the flavor of the dish or the item, whether it's like the meat or the veggie or whatever, avocado oil is a good option because it's pretty neutral. Like I make homemade mayonnaise and I make it with avocado oil because it doesn't taste like anything, just is very neutral. So I like that. And then I use avocado oil to like roast anything in the oven or anything like that I'm pan frying. I use avocado oil not only because it's neutral, but because of that higher smoke point. So things that I'm like pan frying, things that I'm roasting at like a high temperature, like 450, I use avocado oil.
Now, would it be fair to say avocado oil is a little bit more expensive than those other oils you mentioned?
It can be. And I think, it's one of those things too, like it can be evenly priced with olive oil. It can be higher, it can be lower. It depends on the brand, the processing. There's less expensive olive oil and more expensive, and, same thing with avocado oil. But I think like it's about the same if you're looking at the quality as like an extra virgin olive oil.
Right.
Yeah. So I like that one. For that. And then olive oil, I tend to use in non-cooking dishes or my very low temperature. So like salad dressings, something that I'm going to lightly cook or drizzle over at the end, something like that. Like, or if I'm making like a pesto or something, I'll use an olive oil for that. Because I like to I like the flavor of olive oil. And then also I just like to keep it cold or just warm and not reach that smoke point. And then coconut oil, I love in desserts because I think it just kind of like lends that sweetness, that coconut, or like I said, things like curries, soups, things like that, is what I like to use coconut oil for. It has a higher smoke point as well, so I don't mind cooking with that either.
Now let's talk about some of the other oils that are in common usage. Sunflower oil being one of those.
So sunflower oil, safflower oil, canola oil, some of those like those seed oils.
Yes.
I tend to stay away from them
Interesting.
because of the processing that they go through. Yeah. So they tend to be highly processed, and processed in such a way that isn't friendly or welcoming to our body. So they are, yeah. So they use chemicals to process. So chemicals like hexane to process. They have to deodorize it. So if they didn't deodorize it and they didn't use these chemicals, like it would be and smell rancid. You wouldn't want to use it.
Interesting.
So knowing that those oils go through that process, I tend to stay away from them because they're kind of unstable. So you have to wonder when you're taking them in, ingesting them, like, what is that kind of doing in my body, right? Is it increasing the inflammation or the oxidation, things like that? So I tend to stay away from those personally, just because I know how they're processed.
Do you know the story behind canola and where the name came from?
I don't.
It's for Canada oil. It was University of Manitoba in 1978 managed to isolate this particular oil from the rapeseed plant, right? Or the rapeseed seeds, yes. And that, 1978, I believe. Now, another oil, it's interesting you say that because I've always been quite a fan of sunflower oil with certain applications because it does have quite a high smoke point. So it can be used for some pretty serious frying. A lot of French fries, like higher end French fries, are cooked in sunflower oil over here. And vegetable oil. When one sees vegetable oil, what is that? Because it never tells you which vegetable it is, does it?
It could be. It could be anything. That's the problem. It could be. So the seed oils and the vegetable oils tend to be mixed. Like if somebody says vegetable oil, it could be canola. Could be a sunflower, safflower, because they're plants, right? Yes. So that they get mixed in or overlapped with regards to naming and usage. That's so interesting about canola, and I think too. Like when you were saying about sunflower oil, same thing with like something like a walnut oil or a sesame oil, really like any of these oils. Same thing with olive oil. Like if you're getting something that's like a small batch processed correctly, I think that's probably fine or much, much better than if you're getting these ones. If you buy a gallon of oil at a discount store for, $3 or, $2.99, that is not going to be a healthy beneficial oil. But these smaller batch ones that are the fact is, like, to squeeze the oil out of an olive, out of a seed, out of a nut, it's a process that takes a lot of time typically, or a lot of resources, and it can't be done inexpensively without adding those chemicals and things like that. So if you are want to indulge or splurge, oil is a great place to do it because you're going to get the benefits of it. Like, the taste for sure. And that goes hand in hand with the health benefits. So I would say oil is like a great place to splurge. Whereas like some other, things that you cook with, you can kind of not splurge. You can save.
I don't know if you've noticed, but sunflower oil is shooting up in price right now because of the conflict in the Ukraine.
I'm not surprised.
You mentioned nut oils. Another common oil that people use is groundnut oil made from pink peanuts. Your thoughts on that?
So peanut oil. I think that one is, I'm on the fence about that one. I think, again, it would be, there's benefits to peanuts, if they're grown organically, if they're not, what the process is.
Mhm.
But I know like not where I live, but a lot of in the South, like the southeastern part of the United States, peanut oil is a big thing
Yeah.
what
Oh,
they use
yes.
for
Yeah. Very much so.
frying and recipes and things like that. I don't use that one as much, but I think as far as the health benefits, it's, probably in the middle.
And if we're going into grapeseed oil, not a vegetable but a fruit, your thoughts on that?
Grapeseed oil can be a good one for because again it has a higher smoke point, so that can be a really good one for like pan frying, frying, roasting, high temperatures, things like that. And again, I would say it would just depend on the processing, which unfortunately it's hard to know as a consumer what the
Yes. Yes.
processing is. But as much as you can find out about that would be helpful. So it can be processed, you know, correctly, better, more healthfully, or it can be done, more cheaply with those chemicals, genetically modified, things like that.
Now, before we get into the kind of more suspect oils, where does sesame oil fit on this spectrum?
Sesame oil is great. I love sesame oil. I personally love toasted sesame oil. I would put
Yes.
it on like, I mean, anything. But that can be a really beneficial oil, especially with the ratio of the omega threes.
Right.
So that's a positive one to incorporate.
Now, palm oil is a thing that we find in so many prepared foods. Palm oil has a big X over it right now.
Yeah.
Would you care explaining some of the terrible things about palm oil?
Well, I think a lot of the big X comes from the lack of sustainability
Yes.
of the palm. So it not necessarily or isn't necessarily what the oil product is, but it's the deforestation and the eliminating of the habitat of wherever it's grown. And it's like a lot of things, unfortunately. It's like it's maybe not the product, but how we're accessing it
Yeah.
is just not sustainable. So that would be what I would say about palm oil is like there are places, and again, they're going to be small farms, small batches, small companies typically that are going to do it in a sustainable way because they replant or they make sure that they do it in a certain area. They don't invade habitats. So it can be done correctly, but what you would get on a mass level is not that.
Now, from a health standpoint, what I'm about to say will probably, you probably won't be very happy with it. But one thing I do miss about being back in Europe is I know it's a lot less than it used to be, but beef dripping or tallow is used for various applications. Most Probably the most popular usage would be for making chips, as we call them, or fries, as you call them in the States and in Canada. Your thoughts on using beef tallow as a frying medium?
I actually would prefer that to the seed oil. Like
All
I
right,
think,
that's
yeah, I mean,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I think those kinds of oils that you get from an animal are going to be they're the natural, you said drippings, right?
Yes,
Like
yeah, yeah.
that's
It's
what's
dripping, yeah.
naturally comes out of, cooking the meat or processing, like enjoying the animal in another way. So that's I mean, as least processed as you can get, or
Yes.
it can be, right? So that's actually the fat that, our bodies know and understand. It comes from an animal or it comes from a source where like that is the source. It hasn't gone through a lot of processing. Not to say it couldn't. I mean, I'm sure there's companies that are like, yeah, it's, we put it through this processing and we make it less expensive by adding XYZ. But I mean, just in general, that idea would
Now,
be more beneficial health wise than like one of those seed oils that has been refined and added, deodorizers and chemicals and things like that. So I did that surprise you?
it did very much so. Now, where does Chris? I just remembered the product Crisco, which was kind of popular in the 60s, 70s. Where does that sit on the scale of things? That's an animal fat, is it not?
So that's shortening, which it can be vegetable shortening or animal shortening,
Right,
but it's
right.
gone through a high process where it's hydrogenated. So that makes it that solid,
Yes,
at
yes, yeah.
temperature. So again, it's just one of those things. Now, if you had like drippings from like bacon or something like that, it would be solid at a
Yes.
regular temperature, right? So it's just like, but it wouldn't be white. So if you've ever opened up like a jar of Crisco, it's crystal white.
Right, okay.
Why is that? No oil,
Processing,
nothing's
yeah.
white. Walnuts, olives, the animal products, seeds, like nothing's white. So it's just it's the kind of fat that tends to be harmful for us, and because of how it's been processed and what's been added to it.
No, it's interesting. That has fallen out of favor quite a bit in, I guess, the recent decades. Because I haven't seen it, but I guess it's still produced.
It's somewhere.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, Jill, what would the takeaways be for people if you were to give people takeaways about our discussion today about oils?
Yeah. So I think the big thing is that we do need them. We do need healthy fats. And the idea would be to lean towards the minimally processed. I say this about everything, but it's true here too.
Yeah.
The minimally processed oils. So, and you want that balance. And it's going to take, I don't want to say some research, but you'll have to kind of figure out like, okay, this oil is high in this oil is high in this. But as far as getting that balance of the omega-6 to the omega-3s, I think people would feel so much better. I mean, it would give them, that decreased inflammation, that feeling of being able to eat these, get the health benefits from the oils without the negative consequences. So, and this is it's kind of like you get what you pay for. I would say that's kind of one of the takeaways. And unfortunately, if you can buy a gallon of something for 99 cents, it's probably not healthy and ideal.
I don't know where you're shopping because we don't have anything for a gallon of anything for 99 cents. Seriously.
So don't shop there. Don't look for it. But so looking for those minimally processed, organic, non-GMO oils is going to be the best bet. And then making maybe mixing it up. So not if you only have canola oil, introduce another kind of oil so you can get those health benefits and the different ratios, right? So maybe have 3 oils that you kind of rotate through depending on what you're using, and experiment with other oils too, like the toasted sesame oil or walnut oil. You can look up recipes or kind of look up uses of that and try to start experimenting with that.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to start experimenting with coconut oil because we have some. I've just never cooked with it. I think it's for topical application in this house. So it's I'm going to look into that. I'm going to look into that. Yeah. Jill, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution once again. We will catch up with you next month. Where will you be next month, I wonder?
We're going to be going up to Seattle, and then we're going to be going east. So we'll be kind of making the north trek across the United States.
Superb. I will look forward to it, Jill. Thank you very much, and bye for now. Safe travels.
Okay. Bye.